SEGA Bits presents SEGA Talk, a podcast talking all things SEGA with your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. So what?
Hello and welcome to SEGA Talk, episode number 44. I'm your host, George, and with me, like always, is Barry.
Hello.
Is that how you're going to start the episode?
I thought because it's such a burly, rage-filled show, I'd build it up as we go on.
I get you become a man as we get to the end of the episode.
Hi, everybody.
If you guys didn't know, there's a little indie title named Streets of Rage. That's the one we're going to be talking about. The last time we did a Streets of Rage episode was way back in 2017 in episode number 9. Do you remember us talking about the first one?
I do. I remember looking at, because there's so much stuff about it in a lot of the books that are out there, like design docs and art. So I remember digging through a lot of the books I have on the shelf over here. That was fun.
And if you guys actually want to see a lot of concept of this game, we're not really going to be talking about the concept art, but there is almost every stage, everything has been put out there already. So you guys could Google it or buy the collective. What was that book called? The one that had it in?
It's Sega Mega Drive Genesis Collected Works.
And that's obviously up to you guys could buy on the internet. But like every episode, we always talk about our history with the game. So this episode, we're doing the same. Tell everybody your history with Streets of Rage 2.
Well, being a Genesis owner since 91, you'd think it would have been in my collection forever, but it wasn't.
Ooh.
I mean, you know, like, what was I in 91? I was like,
yeah, you're a kid.
6, 7. So it's like, yeah. So like, if you have a beat 'em up, that's kind of your beat 'em up. You're not going to be like, oh, I'm going to own Streets of Rage 2, Streets of Rage 3, Hyperstone Heist. You know, like I'm going to own all these. Like, if you have something that scratches that itch, which I did, which was Ninja Turtles Hyperstone Heist from Konami, then I was set. And so I would rent games. So I'm absolutely certain I rented Streets of Rage 2. But honestly, I think I really started playing the game once those compilations started coming out years later in the late 90s. And, you know, moving forward, you would see it again and again in Sega compilations. So I honestly can't recall the first time I played it, but I know it was in the 90s, but I can't recall like what compilation it was. It's tricky. There's so, like, I don't own any of the Streets of Rage games on the Genesis, like the physical cartridges, but I own the entire trilogy at least 6 times through PS2, GameCube, Xbox, you know, anything. You can find Streets of Rage and Streets of Rage 2. 3, not so much, but
yeah.
That's me.
I think this is like one of my earliest memories growing up, thinking that like the Sega Genesis is really like for more adult kids, because I was like a little kid, right? And I remember this is like a vivid memory that like my cousin, who was older than me, and I was like always looking up to him, he rented it, and then all his friends from the block that he lived in, all the older kids came so they could, I guess, beat the game together. And I just remember watching them doing it, and then trying to get time to play it myself, right? Because it's just pretty, I don't know. When I was a kid, I always rented like the lamest games, like Mickey Mouse. Hey, there's a Mickey Mouse game. I was a little kid. I just really liked like mascot platformers. That's usually what I played. So
for sure, yeah.
I wasn't a bad boy. I saw Streets of Rage, and I'm like, oh, this is for adults, not for me. Like I can't play this. Like I'm a what do they say? It's goody two shoe boy. That's what I was growing up. But I do remember this is one of the first games when I saw it. I was like, wow, the Sega Genesis definitely is more adult oriented and more grim, even though the game is not really that violent or grim or anything. But back then, compared to other games, this game felt dirty and like, I don't know, literally Streets of Rage kind of makes you, that's really what it is. So good name for Streets of Rage came out first.
Ooh, scares me.
Came out first in America on December 20th, 1992. And a few weeks later in Japan and Europe in the mid-January 1993. While the English version release goes simply by Streets of Rage 2. The Japanese release is known as Bare Knuckles 2, The Requiem of the Deadly Battle. And my first question, I mean, we can start this question. Do you think that this game needed a subtitle? And a subtitle like Requiem of the Deadly Battle?
That sounds like a Castlevania game. Isn't that one of them, Requiem for a Dream or something like that? Or
yeah, and not only that, like this is kind of like Yakuza 6, Song of Life. It's like they have this whole like ballad thing going on over there, right? Where it's like nothing's more powerful than a song, even though you're buying a video game.
Yeah, and this is something I did want to bring up during this. Like, I know Streets of Rage was developed in Japan. It's a Japanese game. But honestly, like, as you said, it released in America first. I feel like it's a much more Western franchise. Yeah. Because I feel like the West embraced it a lot more. I feel like there's been a lot more material, like extra material, like comics and crossovers and things like that. And so, yeah, this whole, like, I never really see that many people going, oh no, it's Bare Knuckles 2, The Requiem of the Deadly Battle. It's not Streets of Rage 2. Like, you get that a lot with people who are like are purists. They're like, you go with the Japanese name first, not that dirty American name. But in this case, like Streets of Rage 2, that's the title. And then I always feel like Bare Knuckle comes second. And it's like a little trivia question. It's like, in Japan it's called Bare Knuckle. Ugh,
Yeah, and if the American version had a subtitle like the Japanese one, what do you think Sega of America would have made it?
I think they could have done the thing like they did with Rambo. So you know how it was like First Blood and then Rambo First Blood Part 2? They could do, or even Jackie Chan movies did this. So it would be like Streets of Rage 2, Bare Knuckles.
Oh, they could have put Bare Knuckles as a subtitle. I mean, I don't think it needs it because in America we're like used to shorter names, right? Like, I think the shorter the name in America, the better it is for you to sell. It's just kind of crazy to me that in Japan they have like, sometimes I look at these games and I'm like, whew, I got to read a paragraph of title. It's like
right.
It's like little girl, but she's trapped in the castle in the top of a concert while playing a Requiem song. It's like, okay, cool title. So let's talk a little bit about the development of this game. I think we can all agree that Streets of Rage 2 did everything the first game did, but like bigger, better, and fixed almost every single issue. Sega's Noroshi Oba, who served as designer and director, had moved as producer only in this game, which is kind of weird. And the game had 3 designers. A lot of people agree that most of the game's feel came from actually Yuzo Koshiro's sister, Ayano Koshiro, who obviously was a sister of Yuzo Koshiro, and who obviously wrote the soundtrack for this game. That's the thing that Sega changed in the sequel. So a lot of people, when they think of Sega classic games, they always think Sega developed the game, right? So Streets of Rage 1 was developed by Sega, but Streets of Rage 2 was outsourced. And it was outsourced and made by Ancient, M&M Software, Shout, Design Works, and HIC. So that's already like a lot of teams. So I would consider this a AAA game. You know how we hear today, like, oh, this Assassin's Creed game had 15 studios working on it, 7 studios working on it. This literally had 4 or 5 studios working on it just to get it out on time. So so how do you feel about that? Do you feel like a lot of people put, I guess, too much concentration on Sega being the sole developer, or do you think it matters? Like, do you think that Sega could do this now? Like, oh, let's say the new Sonic game, but they also work with another indie developer to make the animations or something.
I think as long as Sega creatives are involved and weighing in and making important decisions and being creative, then I don't have an issue with it. I think if they just dump it onto a team and say, you make something with this dirty IP, then it doesn't work out. And we saw that a lot in the early 2000s with a lot of like 3D versions of classic Sega arcade games that came out. Yeah. But I do think that's interesting in this case. I knew about Ancient. I didn't know about all these others, but when you say that, it's like Streets of Rage 4 does not seem weird to me anymore.
No.
It's like it's like, yeah, it's Streets of Rage 4 from Lizard Cube and .emu, but like, look at Streets of Rage 2, probably the greatest game of the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And it's not even technically Sega. And again, going into that, you know full well from the community of people that we've been with for the past 10 years that there's some people who are like purists. They're like Sega DNA purists.
Of course.
And they're like, this game doesn't count. Because it was, someone wasn't born and then like embedded with the Sega gene or something. Like,
I never understood this because like I played Outrun 2 so much, and I've noticed that the ones I played was the Sumo Digital port, who added a bunch of content in that I love. I think I'm like, wow, that's the usually when I think of Outrun, sometimes I think of the mini games. It wasn't even by AM2. It was done by Sumo Digital. So to me, it's like, I don't mind people touching the game as long as the ideas are good and they work. And it's pretty obvious that it worked here. Anything you want to say about this before I move on to talk about more about Ancient?
No, let's talk more.
Like we discussed, one of the companies that had the biggest impact on the look and feel of Streets of Rage 2 was Ancient Corp, a Japanese developer founded on April 1st, 1990 by Yuzo Koshiro and his family, including his mother, Tomo Koshiro, and Ayano Koshiro, who worked as a character and graphic designer at the company. When the 3DS version of Streets of Rage came out, Ayano Koshiro did an interview on how her company or Ancient impacted, and she talked about her role in the game, and she says, I'd say chief graphic designer. Nowadays, we call it something like art direction, designing the overall look of the game. I also did character designs and came up with all the special moves and attacks in the rough outline and draft form. That is... she also designed the new character Max and Skate from the ground up, and is the reason Adam went missing in Streets of Rage 2. She explained it by saying that her and her brother, Yuzo, really liked playing Street Fighter 2. And this is her quote. Yeah, that is true. But there was also a certain flow to the fighting that we wanted. I'm sure you've played Street Fighter 2. My brother and I did too. I liked it so much that we bought a cabinet and had it installed in the office at Ancient. My brother and I liked the way that they fought in Street Fighter 2, and between the two of us, a shared vision of the fighting of Street Fighter 2 arose. 2 jabs followed by a straight punch, then some heavy hit, and an enemy goes flying. That kind of flow had to be there. We were also asking what would be fun for the sequel. You had Axel, your standard fighter, then Blaze, the speedy character, but there was also Adam in the first game, but Adam had no real specialty, laughs. So he was out, laughs. One of the reasons Adam's removal was approved by Sega was because the company wanted to have a better looking sprites, which would mean that the team would have to reanimate the moves and thus basically starting from scratch. So, Barry,
yes.
What is your opinion on, like, them leaving Adam? Like, you could have just changed Adam, right? You could have made him a different character or something, but, like, they decided, like, no way, he's out.
I feel like he was kind of a boring character just because you had your base male, base female, and then base male again, but it was just, like, he was black. And... even when
we talked about the first game in the design notes, it was kind of like, I mean, I wouldn't say racist. I would say like ignorant. The way that Sega came up with him, and they're like, we need a black guy because Americans have black people. So, and it's kind of why they have the blonde guy too and the girl.
And I will say they did do something different, which was not making the black guy the big black guy as you see in like every Japanese game. So good on them for that. But I think it's interesting that they went small instead of big. Like, you don't see that too often.
Definitely.
So, and they still kept him black. I mean, he's just different, you know, Skate. But what was the wrestler's name?
Max.
And what's his ethnicity? Is he Hispanic?
I have no idea. Maybe like I don't think they talk about it, and I didn't see it in here. But he kind of looked Asian to me, like a big Asian guy. Maybe that's breaking stereotypes in Asia. But he had kind of like Asian eyes.
Yeah. So I it makes sense to remove him. I think nowadays, with the climate we have, I don't think they would just drop a character like him. I think they would bring him back, which actually would keep him, and then add more characters, which surprises me because. Not to talk about Streets of Rage 4 too much, but like Adam's not in it, right?
Adam is in it. He's unlockable. Is it an animated version of him, like the new style? It's the new style, yeah. With the glasses.
Okay, good.
He has glasses and like a kind of like they basically remade his character from the ground up.
I saw him, but I didn't know that was him. Okay,
yeah, that's him. Yeah. So. They also, like I said, let's look at the graphical differences here. There's a GIF I put in the thing. As you can tell, Blaze from Streets of Rage 1 to 2, the animation is about like 10 times better. Like if you were to show the Streets of Rage 1 sprites versus 2 in the quality of the animation, I think you could sell this. This is like. Upgrade from a Master System game to a Genesis game or something, of that. For
sure.
Of that magnitude. And it's, did you notice this right away when you played, because you played them later, so when you played Streets of Rage 1 and 2, did you notice how much better the graphics were in the sequel?
Absolutely. I think the characters looked bigger, they were a lot more expressive, and it's interesting just comparing 1, 2, and 3. 2 is like the most expressive, and it's just because they put one little white dot there. That's all that's doing it. One little white square is giving her an actual eye, and the other two they look like this, like their eyes are closed or something. It doesn't look as nice.
That I agree with you 100%. And also, I don't like her Streets of Rage 3 white look. I think it's stupid.
I don't like any of their colors. I don't like any of their colors in Streets of Rage 3.
Yeah, so let's talk about the story here. We're going to do this thing where you read the story while the video plays. And I think, personally to me, this is probably one of the best intros in video games, I think. So it always gave me the chills growing up. So you want to start the video? Tell me when.
Yeah, I've started the video. 1 year after the battle, the city that had been plagued with crime and violence was safe and peaceful. However, evil has once again cast its shadow over the city. Mr. X, the syndicate boss, believed destroyed by the 3 young vigilantes, has come back to life, stronger than ever. Thirsty for revenge, he kidnaps Adam in an attempt to lure Axel and Blaze into a trap. Axel and Blaze set out to help their faithful companion, joined by Axel's friend Max, a wrestler, and Adam's kid brother, Skate. They're determined to save Adam and put Mr. X out of action. 4 young friends, rage burning inside them, make a stand for friendship and peace.
And still...
Man, that went fast. That went fast.
And still,
is it still going?
Yeah, no, it's already over. It's just gonna be the start menu. But and still, what do you think about that story?
I mean, it's predictable. It's fine. I don't think it's actually all that exciting.
No, definitely not. But the intro, I think the music, the visuals, the ending is a little weird. I wonder what the Japanese translations is, because like friendship, it's like I guess it's kind of Sonic the Hedgehog in the end, right? And
it's good. I think I like the first one because it leads into saying Streets of Rage at the very end. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Remember that? And they're like, and it will all be decided on the Streets of Rage, and you're like, whoa. This
Holy
one, it's
crap.
like it's going real slow, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, so let's catch you up, Mr. X, and remember that in the last game, and then the 3 guys took him down, and now they've got 4 guys going after him, but it's Streets of Rage 2, so it's not 4, and now we're gonna, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Just say, evil crime lord, piece of crap. It's time for you to knock him out.
Who does that guy look like, too, the Mr. X?
I'm gonna be honest with you. He looks like Donald Trump a lot.
Thank you.
To me,
Thank
I
you.
always thought that when he became president, I'm like, finally we can make memes. But I don't really like making too many memes on like getting political on our Twitter. But yeah, he definitely looks like I don't know, like an alien version of him. I don't know. Maybe it's because he's old.
He kind of looks like Ivan Ooze from the Power Rangers. Remember him, the purple guy?
I always thought it was kind of weird that the bad guy, the syndicate that you fight, he isn't like some like buff ass ninja dude that's like a criminal. Like he could knock you out. It's always he's like a fat old white guy with long hair. It's like all right, cool. This is it. All right. But anyway, let's talk about so Streets of Rage 2. Let's talk about the characters. First of all, we got our hero, Axel Stone. Axel is one of the few characters that appear in every Streets of Rage game. This time, he returns with pretty much the same look as the first game, but instead of a tank top, he is wearing a white t-shirt. His gloves have also changed with a more red color, giving him like he's wearing a kickboxer's glove look. Axel is considered to be the well-rounded character who is considered easy to use due to his special attack having multiple hits. His signature moves include Dragon Smash, Dragon Wing, and the iconic Grand Upper. All of these iconic moves first appeared in this title too. Obviously the biggest upgrade than just because in the first game when you did the special, you would just call the cops and everybody had it and it was kind of easy. In this one, everybody just felt more unique. That was the best part of the game. What do you think about Axel's new look compared to his old one?
I like it. I think he looks cool. That's kind of...
Do the little changes, like changing his shirt to a t-shirt and maybe making his gloves red, make it pop more? Or because I feel like it makes it easier to see who you're punching with the red glove. It wasn't that hard, but...
I like that. I like the little touches of color to him. It's good. I just, it's kind of an iconic look for Axel that I think any other game that tries to redo, even the fourth one, kind of falls short. His beard and everything, it looks fine. Yeah. But this is the Axel I know.
I think a lot of people agree, and I think him being fat in 4 was one of the biggest complaints I heard about his new look.
Yeah.
They're like, why is he fat? Did he let himself go? I'm like, damn, it's been 10 years, bro. Like, he's not working out. The next person we got is Blaze Fielding. Just like Axel, Blaze has appeared in every single Streets of Rage game. While Blaze is very similar to her first look, they did change her. Actually, I don't think she's that similar. They did change her up, including taking away her red jacket, which is back in 4, giving her a crop top. And she kept her skirt, but now is wearing pantyhose and has way thicker legs. Like she's more muscular looking. Also, her headband has been removed. In the sequel, Blaze moves out of the city and owns a dance studio. Comes back to because Adam's missing. Blaze's new moves and changes really show you that the team loves Street Fighter 2. We got I don't even know how to say her name, but the name of this stuff like Kakoshoyo, which is the projectile like Chun-Li, Imbukayoko, which is like a cartwheel, and a vertical slash, which is a somersault. What do you think about her redesign, and what do you think about her new moveset? And do you think she is kind of like Chun-Li? Because like Chun-Li has that power move where she's like a projectile, and then she has the spinning back, the spinning kick, but hers is like a somersault.
I guess I can see that. Yeah, moves wise, it is very like Chun-Li, but everything else she looks, unique. I think again, this is her most iconic look. This is what I think when I think of Blaze, and I think she looks awesome. I have no complaints. Again, I think 3 goofed up on all the character colors. I sometimes I think I'm playing like a Sprite recolor when I'm playing. I'm like, what happened to their shirts? They look weird. But
I do like the pantyhose because I think it just like kind of separates the body and the thing, and the design wise, it just looks cool.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Because you're showing so much skin on top. Before she had a jacket, but I think this is better. It gives it more color.
Right, yeah. I didn't even notice that they were pantyhose. I thought they were just like darker legs, but I can see that now.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I think she looks great. I like the little gold cuffs. It kind of reminds me. Amy Rose has those now, right? In Sonic, the new design, she has like these little ring cuffs,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like Blaze. So yeah, I mean, I play as Blaze the most out of all of them. So I always like the speedier characters because I like Sonic. So
Talking about speedy characters. We
Oh,
got
man.
A brand new boy
Let's do
right
it.
here. Eddie Skate Hunter. Eddie Skate Hunter was actually called Sam Hunter in Japan. Is the new playable character in this game. Adam Hunter's brother Skate plays a smaller, faster, and trickier character gameplay style, which is why he replaced his brother. Skate is a stereotype of the late 80s, early 90s American teenager, including the latest style and lingos. While other heroes have a ton of signature moves, our boy Skates only has Migraine, or at least what I saw. Maybe Corkscrew, this Corkscrew one too. But Migraine is when he grabs people and he goes on top of his head and he punches them 6 times or whatever. His special was obviously the breakdancing Corkscrew. Skate is the only character that could double dash to run. All other characters only walk. And I always thought that was... I still think, because I think even in the new game, Streets of Rage 4, not all characters could dash or double tap movement. I don't know.
Right.
I just think every time you double hit something, I always wanted to move faster. And even if it's not as fast, right?
I think that's the difference between Ninja Turtles Hyperstone Heist and Turtles in Time is the dash. That's one of the differences. And like that make or breaks the game for me because I'm always dashing. I'm like running from one end to the other. So yeah, to not see that in Streets of Rage 4 and this one, it does kind of hurt it a little bit in my eyes when comparing it to other franchises. But that's cool that Skate does that. I forgot about that move.
Yeah. Actually, the only thing I just replayed 2 on the 3DS. You did too. I think the only time I really, really felt it where I was like, come on, man, hurry up. It's when the first stage where they have this one part where you're walking straight and then like the camera is like, they're trying to show you the vertical. I read the notes. They're trying to show you that oh, look, Genesis could vertical scroll or whatever. And they're trying to like show you off a technique. But now I'm like, bro, I have a PS4. I think I know about vertical scrolling. But that's the only time in that game I think the game felt like they put the bad guys so close to each other and made the scenes where there's so much fighting that you kind of forget that there isn't a dash sometimes. So I think they did an all right job as well as they could, But yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Max Thunder Hatchet, who is, in my opinion, the worst character out of all these. Sorry, everybody that likes Max on the internet. I just think they could have come up with something cooler. And he's the other new character. Max is a professional wrestler, which is quite obvious based on his design. In his story, he is friends with Axel Stone and joins the group to find Adam Hunter. While in this game, Max is the slowest, strongest character. He has quite a few signature moves, including Spinning Knuckle Bomb. Max spins his arms, hitting enemies. Thunder Tackle, shoulder smashing enemies. Power Slide, Bear Hug. Thunder Body Slam, grab, jump over enemies in a violent slam. And Atomic Drop, slamming enemies by grabbing them from the back. Second most powerful move in the game. Quite obvious that the character was inspired by Street Fighter 2's Zangief. I mean, especially the when you have the hands and you're circling, that's one of his Zangief's signature moves. While he was just a wrestler in the game, in the comic he was also a cop, obviously not canon. What do you think about, who's your favorite character? You already said Blaze. And who's your least favorite character to play?
Max. Like, I completely forgot. Like, when I was talking about the wrestler character earlier, I was thinking he was in the third game, and then I remembered, no, it's that doctor guy. So he's forgettable. I forget that he's in this game. Sorry, Max.
Yeah, the thing with Max is that, like, not only that, he has nothing to do with the story. He's, like, the only character that could, like, stay home. And he's like, oh, I'm just friends with this guy. I could stay home. I don't even know Adam. I'm not even a fucking cop. Like, these guys are cops. I'm not a cop. I don't have anything to do with this. Leave me alone. He could have just done that, but he didn't. Because of friendship, right?
Right.
Let's talk about some of the stages. I think one of the biggest changes for this whole game was... how much attention they put into the stages. So the stage, everybody knows, stage number 1, Downtown, probably the most played game. And before I did notes, I was just thinking, like, Downtown has 3 transitions, right? It took me forever to find these transitions, so I just started taking them myself later on. But the first level is very similar to the first game of the first stage called City Street, giving the same vibes of a green city lights, but this time there is a transition into a bar and a fight outside in the rain with the boss Barbin. But you also have a mid-level fight with Jack, who I always thought was like a Vietnam veteran. I don't know why. He had like a mohawk with knives, right? And when I played it,
Right.
Right away I was like, this guy's a Vietnam veteran. I don't know why. There's no story to it. I just assumed as a kid, I'm like, he has a sick car in the garage. He's a Vietnam veteran. Come on, guys. Everybody knows.
Right.
So right away they show you like, okay, we're starting off like the first game, but wait, you're actually going in a bar. You're actually going outside. They could have literally made these three backgrounds their own stages, like each one.
Yeah.
And nobody would have complained. So I think that's crazy. What do you think about the first stage, the opening stage?
I mean, it's iconic, as is with a lot of, every video game. I think really the first stage people play the most. So you really have to hit it out of the park. And I think the big thing for me that always hits me, because, you have those moments in video games where, like, the first time it happens, you're like, oh my God, this is so cool. And then every other time it happens, you're always looking forward to it. Yeah. For me, it's when you start walking diagonally downwards, and then the music, because it just times out the way you're playing, like the amount of time typically, that the music, the music drops at that time. Like the that kicks in. And so I don't remember the first time I played this game, but I know for sure that feeling, because I get it every time where I'm going straight and I'm like, oh, the drop's coming. And then when the drop comes is the cool part where you're going down diagonally. And I think it just kind of stuck with me, because at the time I was like, I've never experienced this in a fighting game like this. Like, I've never been able to go downwards. It's so cool. And then the music hits and you're like, oh, and this music's good too. So, it's like they hit you with all these multiple things at once. And it's just so cool. I love it. I think the only thing that rivals it in a Sega game is the final stage in Rez, when you blast off into outer space and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
And the music goes, the mind killer. And you're like, ah. So I think those two moments are where, like, the music and just something real cool gameplay wise happens at the same time, and you're just like, this is perfection. I love this.
You described it.
That's me.
You described it perfectly. We could just move on to the bridge construction second stage. And these are
I hate that. Don't talk about it.
These are actually called rounds in the game. They're not called stages, but I already made the assets, so we're gonna go with stages in this podcast. The second stage takes our heroes on a bridge and introduces a new annoying enemy type, the motorcycles. You also get a great view of the city skyline at night, which is nice. The boss of this stage is Jet, who is a blonde, long-haired character in a sort of white jumpsuit who has a jet pack and flies. I also thought he looked like Jim Carrey growing up. Maybe not that much of a resemblance at all, but
right, of course he does.
Yeah, I mean, Jim Carrey was everywhere growing up, so just a white guy with long hair, Jim Carrey. It works. He
looked very sexual, didn't he? Where he's like, yeah, I'm looking at the sprite. He's always like,
yeah, and he would pick you up and then body slam you from the sky down. I'm like, that's sick, dude. Like, I wish I could. I need a jetpack, and I still want a jetpack as an adult. Like, if I could buy one and just like jetpack everywhere, dude, I would do that like in a heartbeat. But
I'm sure you would.
The only thing that's I guess you could go against this level is that it didn't have that much of a transition. It was always the bridge, right? And I guess a lot of people did not like the motorcycle people. I thought it was sick. It kind of reminded me of like what's that movie called?
Rumble in the Bronx.
The Rumble in the Bronx too, but like the other one, the Warriors, where like like the danger or whatever of motorcycles. But these people did not show up in the sequel. I mean, in 4, by the way, they like changed them up to a fat biker girl that like hits you with their head, but there's no motorcycles actually driving in the game. Sad. Let's talk about the third game. And the third stage is the craziest stage. So many transitions. The third stage in this game has one of the most unique backgrounds in the game. You start off in front of a museum park, which is kind of Disney, if you look at the castle. Yeah. And then you end up in some biker room brawl, which like they give you like a pipe in the middle, and you're supposed to be like fighting for your life. Then you go to a pirate-themed arcade that includes bare knuckles, the arcade machine. Then you end up like in the bottom of a cabin of a ship. Then you transition to the ship pirate ship deck. Then you end up outside the amusement park again for a short while. And then you end up at some alien H.R. Geiger inspired stage where you fly a floating head called Vihilitz, and then Zamza, is that how you say his name? A boss who looks a lot like Street Fighter's not Zangief, what's his name? Blanca. He always reminded me of Blanca, like from Street Fighter, because he has the rolls, and you can tell there's a lot of characters in this game where they're like, let's make that guy a bad guy in our game.
Right.
Yeah. So what do you
think
get
that from Shinobi too, where they're just like, let's steal a bunch of other characters and throw it into our game.
Yeah, at least they made them original in this one. I was going to tell you, what do you think about this level, and what do you think about the alien? Like, it's just, to me, when I was a kid, it felt so random that you're going from, like, Disneyland. I understand the pirate theme, because you're in a theme park, but then all of a sudden you're in an alien place where...
well, I mean, I guess it's like an alien theme park ride, right? Like,
but then why am I getting attacked? Like, why am I getting attacked by the head?
Maybe you should stay in your ride vehicle. That's why they tell you to, keep your hands and arms inside the ride vehicle at all times. Maybe he got out, and this is what happened.
I don't know. I feel like they had these assets created because I read something in that same interview with Yuzo's sister, and she said that she wanted to make that alien stage the first stage. Like, can you imagine starting off right away in the alien stage? You're like, wait, what the hell? How did I get here?
That would be idiotic. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course. So, like, the way they did it, I think it makes more sense in transitioning. Like, you're literally on a mission to find this guy, and you're going through all these weird bases. That's what it feels like to me. And it would have ruined it if you started right away in Alien ship. Like, I understand you like Alien. It's a great movie. But you can't just randomly make it the first stage. I mean, let's talk about the fourth stage, the stadium. The stadium is a pretty cool stage. You start outside at the SEGA Stadium. I wish when I was a little kid, I'm like, dude, if SEGA made a stadium, oh man, that would be sick. And you could actually see the park you left behind in this one. And you end up inside a baseball stadium that literally takes you, like, it's so weird, like you're on top of a dugout and you're fighting, and all of a sudden this elevator starts taking you down, and then you end up in a wrestling match with an Ultimate Warrior inspired wrestler. So like it's such a weird like transition, and this is the start of the elevators, something that this game really, really, really loved. So, what do you think about the baseball stage? Do you remember this one? Did you have any vivid memories?
I remember the baseball stage. I thought it was kind of cool, but the whole, like, I guess their thought process is like baseball's a sport and wrestling's a sport. So maybe they were like, well, when they make stadiums, maybe they just put other sports like a high rise. So if you go up, it's football. If you go down, it's wrestling. I think they just wanted to work in wrestling because they had a wrestling character. So if you play through as him, there's like one stage where he really fits, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe that was the thought. And so they're like, well, where do we work in wrestling? Well, let's have it be under a baseball stadium.
I really love the beginning of the stage with the Sega Stadium sign, because like they did this in the other one too, the amusement park, but I thought the street looked really cool in this one. And I really love how the bad guys are sleeping on the bench and then they just like randomly get up to fight you. It's like, bro, you can't nap out. Like, just pretend you don't see me. Why are you fighting me? I'm just gonna knock you out. I'm gonna knock you out, dude. That's what's gonna happen. You should have stayed sleeping. I think this is the worst stage in terms of transitions. Is stage number 5. You basically, it's called The Ship, and this stage has the least amount of unique backgrounds and starts off with you fighting inside a ship, and then you go on the deck. And this one, this one's where you fight our bearer, which is the really fat, bald boxer with a stash. He's the bad guy in this one. I didn't put it on the pictures, but he's pretty ugly. But do you remember what he looks like with a big old? He has like a big old beer belly.
Yeah, I do. And
this is the stage that always, dude, when I was a kid, this stage made me so angry. And this is another one they kind of cheaped out a little bit because, the stage is called The Jungle. You actually start off at a beach, which I thought looked cool, and it was actually which is a transition that you have landed in Mr. X Island from the ship, because the ship was the last one. This stage reminded me of the first game's third stage, Beachfront, but it looks a lot nicer than the first game. Because so then you end up in this road that's like diagonally, and then you get randomly hit with these motorcycle guys, and they just become so annoying in here. And also, the boss fight is 2 characters in here. It's called Soother and Stealth, which are just recolors of stages 2 and stages 3's bosses, as you can tell right here in the end. If you're watching it on YouTube. What do you think? I mean, there's nothing really much to think about it. What do you think about the jungle? Does that look like a jungle to you? It looks like a forest.
No, jungle was always really forgettable to me. Like, I remember the beachfront. I thought that was nice, but the whole rest of it was just kind of forgettable, unfortunately. Like, it's probably the weakest of all the stages.
I think the scene right here where you're fighting the last boss or whatever, and then you can see the whatever, the tower, mansion, whatever Mr. X lives in, fortress. That looks cool. The beach looks cool. I wish they would have called it a beach level and kind of expanded on maybe having this is something I never understood. There was never civilians anywhere. Like, you're fighting, everything's empty. It's like COVID-19, but you know what I mean? It's like nobody's in the beach. Like, it would have been cool if they added just random people sunbathing and then looking up at you when you're fighting, kind of like a Street Fighter stage, you know? They just repeat the animation or whatever.
Right.
They could have focused on that instead of trying to do this jungle, and I don't think that looks like a jungle. It looks like a lot of trees. Maybe the woods could have been the name. But who knows? Now let's talk about stage number 7, which is called wait, where am I? Munitions plants. So it's like a plant you start munitions plant, sorry. It's the font's all weird. The game actually makes you start off what looks like a barrel mutant lab place that has platforms that slow you and speed you down. I guess this is the gimmick in this stage. The little platforms that move, remember those?
Right, yeah.
And basically you go to another elevator stage, and then you go all the way to the roof. And I always loved the roof scene here because I really liked the sunset they did. I always thought it was cool and this is something that's going to continue. It's like you started off at night in the beginning, right? And now you fought all day, all the way to here where it's already morning, you know? You've been fighting so long, you know?
Right.
I always thought that little touch is cool. The boss fight is actually 2 robots, maybe made by Dr. Eggman. We don't know. Particle and Molecule, they were called. Do you remember this stage? Because this stage, I think, is also kind of could blur through the middle of it, you know?
Yeah, I can see that. I like these type of stages, though. It kind of reminds me of Wing Fortress Zone from Sonic 2, where it's it's got the black and yellow warning things, and it's all very mechanical. It's got a very Sonic vibe to it, to be honest. Like that one screenshot there with the red, it kind of looks like something out of Sonic Adventure, you know, when you're on the egg carrier. So it's a cool stage. I like it. As a penultimate stage, I think it's cool.
And if you were good enough, if you were lucky enough, if you were man enough, you would end up in stage number 8, Syndicate Stronghold. And we have, the Stronghold is where Mr. X lives. And I always thought when I was a kid, I'm like, this dude doesn't have couches. He doesn't have TVs. He doesn't have girls here. What are you doing? Just hanging out with all these, thugs and goons? All right, dude. Whatever you want, man. The start of the stage gives you a beautiful view of the horizon as you fight in an upscale mansion, ? This will lead you to an elevator. Doesn't this team just love elevators? Where you fight till you reach Mr. X, who sits on his throne nonchalantly as you fight his goons, including fan favorite Shiva. After you defeat Mr. X, he fights you with a Tommy gun. I always thought that was interesting, that he's just like, I'm not a fighter, dude, I'm just gonna shoot you. And then you just beat him up. He was actually kind of easy, in my opinion, compared to, like, I thought the hardest boss in this game that I had the most trouble with was actually the Macho Man. That's why I don't like that baseball stage too much, because I think that boss is ridiculously cheap.
That's interesting.
Which part in this game did you have the most trouble with when you were playing?
I mean, I think the end boss, just in general,
really
is tough.
Well, I mean, I had trouble a lot of these. I think this game is like, you really make you hate yourself sometimes when you play it and you die.
Mm-hmm.
One thing in this game that nobody really talks about, but I guess we'll talk about a little bit, is duel mode.
Ooh.
Sort of how Sonic 1 to Sonic 2 added multiplayer mode as an afterthought, or at least I think it's an afterthought. I mean, it's not as well designed as the Street. I mean, Sonic 2's multiplayer mode wasn't a selling feature. That's kind of what I mean.
Right.
Streets of Rage 2 added a duel mode, which was influenced at the time because I already told you they were addicted to Street Fighter 2. In duel mode, you get to fight against each other, allowing a player to pick a hero, pick a stage, and also pick if you want special moves on or off. At the start, the first player starts on the left and the second player at the right. The arena is filled with different weapons, and you have 99 seconds to knock each other out, basically. The first to hit the ground without health loses. If no one loses their health, by the end, the guy with the most health wins. Each time you win, you get a star. Win 2 rounds, you win the game. What is your opinion on duel mode in Streets of Rage 2? Did you play it a lot, or were you more about the co-op / single player story mode?
Yeah, I never really played duel mode, so I can't comment on it. But it's nice that it's there. I like that it's there. I get annoyed actually when it's not there in fighting games, because it's like, you might as well toss it in there. You have all the assets, you have all the mechanics, so why not give people the option to do a little, one-on-one fighting?
You know what? I 100% agree with you. But did you ever play Did you ever play Sonic 2's multiplayer a lot?
Not too much, but when I did, I got a kick out of it. It was fun in little bites, though. It wasn't like you were going to spend hours. You kind of do it for like 20 minutes and then you're done. It didn't take too much time, I thought, especially with the later games.
Yeah, I know, I agree. They're always an afterthought, but I've met people that like are obsessed with the Sonic 2 multiplayer, or like the kart racing in Sonic Adventure 2. Like,
I will say, yeah.
Yeah, go on.
No, go on. I agree. You were saying with the kart racing, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I met people that are just like super obsessed with these little multiplayer modes where I'm like, I never touched it. Like duel mode, I played it maybe 5 times my whole life. I think the most I played it was people that I knew on the internet when the Xbox Live port came out. They wanted to play duel mode with me, and it was all right. I just don't find it as fun as. I mean, if you're gonna play kind of a multiplayer like this seriously, you might as well just play a fighting game. But it's a cool little mode to have like extra in the game. It's kind of like I think this is something that Sega did really well during this period, where they always give you something more.
Right, and I will say, since we're talking about these modes, and I'll never talk about this again in another podcast probably, but in Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, which is a terrible game, they have a multiplayer mode that was developed, from what I remember, by a different studio, and it's fun. Like I played it with a friend. I'm like, this is enjoyable. Like, why isn't this the game? So if you have that game, try it out. It's like it's not terrible. It's fun. Like, I had fun with it, and so I'm like, man, that other studio should have made this game. But moving on.
You can't talk about Streets of Rage 2 without talking about the soundtrack. Yuzo Koshiro was obviously came back for this album, which I don't know if it's a huge deal. I think it's a huge deal because, I mean, obviously his soundtrack's great. And he's usually, like every time you hear about Streets of Rage, you always hear his name. But he had somebody collaborating this time, Motohiro Kawashima, who worked with him on Batman Returns, the 8-bit version, and Shinobi 2, The Silent Fury. So the same year, basically they made the Batman Returns soundtrack, the Shinobi 2 soundtrack, and the Streets of Rage 2 soundtrack within the same year together. That's crazy because most bands can't even put out one good album between 4 people in 1 year. So like, hey, this guy just popped out some legacy soundtracks all at once. So obviously they collaborated, but I think the most people give Yuzo credit because he has his name on the start menu and he's the only person in this whole thing. Not even Ancient, not even all the other studios that helped them work on the game got their name on it. Only Sega and Yuzo Koshiro have their name on the start menu. So that's kind of cool. They also had the same producer. So a lot of people considered the Streets of Rage 2 soundtrack to be the best soundtrack, not only composed by Yuzo Koshiro, but one of the best soundtracks to show off Sega Genesis YM2612 sound chip. Yuzo labels his music hardcore techno, and if you labeled it as a genre that was influenced, we could be here all day. We could use stuff like ambient, breakbeat, chip tune, dance, house, jazz progressive, and techno. Now, if you want to hear it, let's talk about some of the albums. He's one of the few games that got a soundtrack CD back in the day. The original, it's obviously up at, if you want it for free, if you don't want it physically, you could go at Spotify and check it out already. You don't have to hear us. Right. But if you want it on CD, there was one released in 1993, which featured like its own artwork. And if you're watching on YouTube, it's on the screen. And then that same CD was released in America in 2000 by Mars Colony Music, and it's pretty rare. It has 20 tracks, 55 minutes. And then we got a physical release. This is the first time we got this album physically released after that by Data Disc. They did a vinyl version of the soundtrack, which had alternative and unused tracks. And then after that, we got the Way O CD and tape, which featured all the same tracks and stuff, even the unused stuff. But this one had a 17-minute mega mix by Shinji Hoso, or known as Mega 10, who is famous for doing the Streets Ridge Racer soundtrack. So not even Sega. So yeah, he's more of a Namco guy, and he did a 17-minute remix of all the tracks. I listened to it. It's cool, but like this perfect soundtrack is already rare. Like they only did limited copies, so if you didn't pick it up, I don't know. Sorry. Obviously, the soundtrack is great. What is your thoughts looking back, and do you think it's the best use of the Sega sound chip? What other games do you think might rival it in sound?
Oh boy. Well, looking back, I think it is a fantastic soundtrack. Like I said, that first stage, Go Straight, I think is just insanely iconic. Probably one of the best tunes on the Genesis. Other games that rival it, though, I would say maybe Sonic 2 is really good, has really good music. Any of the Sonic games really on the Genesis have great music. What else? Echo, I think, sounds pretty good.
You already named the two I was going to name. But yeah, I agree with you 100. I think for different reasons, though, each one, like, Echo has, like, the weirdest sounds I've never heard any other game. Like, the soundtrack is just strange. This one is more, like, jazzy and, like, all these, like, genres of music that they're so widespread. I agree with you. What do you think about people that always say the Sega Genesis has a bad sound chip? Like, that's been a trend, right?
Well, I was gonna say I have no time for them, and I don't want them as like a part of my life. I don't want to know these people, and that might sound like I'm being funny, but I'm not. Like, they can just back off and go live their life away from me.
I think it's because of miseducation. I think there's a lot of games that
Right.
do have bad sound, but it's like I could bring up a Super Nintendo game that has bad sound. I could bring up...
Oh, there's tons. I mean, just as there... I feel like it's a big Super Nintendo versus Genesis thing, honestly.
For sure.
Like, you know me, I watch the Cinemassacre stuff and all that, but like Mike Matei, I like him, but like when he starts going off on the sound of the Genesis or something, like it's just... He doesn't like the Genesis, and I think it's a Super NES thing that was ingrained in him as a child, honestly. Because it's like, for me, when I listen to the Super NES, it sounds too synthy. It sounds like people go, oh, listen to the violins. I'm like, but they aren't violins. When you have sounds coming from the Genesis, you're not going, oh, listen to the trumpets, listen to the pianos. Like, it's not a synthesizer. It shouldn't have to be. It should be video game music, chiptune, blippity bloops. You know, I like that.
I have to agree.
Okay,
I
done.
did watch his. I did watch his video where he did his Sega Genesis versus. Is that the same person, right? The Angry Video Game Nerd.
James and Mike. Mike has a little more,
Mike,
I think, dislike for the Genesis.
Okay, never mind. Okay, I was thinking about that he was the AVG, and I know who Mike is now. I just popped in my head right now. Most of the changes. Okay, well, let's talk about localization changes, right? That's something that even right now is kind of a big deal with gamers. Like, they don't want their Japanese games changed at all. And now that we have a voice on the internet, people complain about it. I think Atlas just got kind of some grief about some changes they made in the new Persona game. They took out some gay scene or something like that was weird. And it's like a 5-second scene in a 100-hour game, but most of the changes for the localization were minor, but some of the changes in the USA version actually censor the game. The obvious one we talked about is that the Japanese version is called Bare Knuckles 2. The second was the name. They changed the name from Duel Mode in Japan to Battling, and Skate was known as Sammy. But let's talk about some censorship here. First one.
Oh, no.
Censored panties. Okay, I know this is going to hurt a lot of feelings.
I want to see the panties.
Well, you can see them right here on the screen if you're watching on YouTube.
Let me look.
Let's get into some censorship. In America, the first minor change is that in the Japanese and European version, when Blaze does a jump kick, her legs are a little more spread, and you get a panty shot. In the US version, it's closer together, but you don't see her underwear. This might be a huge deal if you're Oolong from Dragon Ball. That might be a big deal to you.
Look at those panties.
And so that was the first one. The second one is basically Mr. X has a cigar. They obviously took that off a Western release because smoking is bad, kids. And I mean, okay, so these things are minor changes. Do they even matter? And does it really affect your life that you didn't see the panties and you didn't see the cigar?
I want to see Mr. X's panties.
Actually, that's a good.
I think it's...
That's a good. I want to see that too.
Make it fair. I want his legs separated, fully apart in panties. No, it's just like... I don't understand when people get all up in arms about this. The classic one is when they changed the car from Outrun, and people are like, I can't play it. They changed the car. I'm like, it plays the same. It doesn't look like the car, though. It's a different car. It's not even real. I'm like, none of it's real. Like, to be honest... Like, in this case, like, yeah, it's just a little censorship, but, like, come on. Like, if you really are upset about not being able to see panties, like, you need to reassess your life. Like, just go look at a picture of panties and then come back and play Streets of Rage 2. You don't need to see the panties.
If they had it in or had it out, wouldn't change my life at all.
The cigar thing annoys me just because I don't have a problem when it's, like, the villain smoking. Because it's clearly showing that, like, a bad guy is doing it. That's not a problem for me. Like, if Blaze and Axel, after they killed him, were like, let's light up, you know, like, you'd be like, oh, I don't know if this is any good.
Do drugs, kids.
I'll be honest, my favorite is the 3D Classics credits where, Skate's, like, coming in with the thumbs up. Remember that?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't care. Whatever.
I agree 100% with you. It doesn't affect my life. It's not a big deal. And my only problem with, like you said, is this one. But I do remember being a little kid and
I want panties.
I remember being a little kid and playing Street Fighter and like pausing at the right moments when Chun-Li did kicks. I could see her. You could see her underwear. I don't know why I did that. It's cringy now thinking about it as an adult, but I guess we all do cringy stuff when we're kids.
We should look at underwear more often.
Underwear. Everybody should just have underwear and not have pants on. I don't understand why it should be underwear. It should be overwear. I always nobody complained when they watched Batman's underwear. They're over their pants. Mm-mm. So let's talk about.
We liked it.
Let's talk about promotion and ads. In my opinion, Streets of Rage 2 is the most important one of the most important Sega Genesis and Mega Drive franchises, not named Sonic the Hedgehog. The first game was a huge hit, so it was obvious that Sega had some promotions and different ads to promote the sequel. The first ad we're going to look at is a American print ad. We used to have print ads, right, guys?
Yeah.
The first ad has someone in the hospital bed with a Genesis controller playing Streets of Rage 2 on 4 screens because they're so hardcore. And the second page of the ad has like these weird type fonts where it's like really like edgy words, really big, and then really small letters. So when you go in, once they catch your attention and you start reading it, it's actually an interview with Scott Steinberg, product manager of Streets of Rage 2, and he just talks about what's new in the game. What do you think about this ad? And do you think this, like, you're a graphic designer, do these like big fonts and then small fonts to get your attention? Does this work?
Well, I think "Welcome to the Next Level" is one of Sega's best like slogan / like I don't really know how to describe it, like graphic type graphics. I think it's just so cool looking. I like how it fits into that box. They use the different colors, the Welco Mitat He Next to Level thing. As far as the imagery, I think it works. You can see the controller, you can see the game, you see 4 screenshots, though his foot's covering one of them. So it's I don't know. I mean, I don't really get the sense that he was beaten up and that's why he's playing. It's more like you were in an auto accident and you have something to do while you're in the hospital.
That's what I got.
I think it might have worked better if you saw some bruise and bloodiness or something that made it look like he got punched, but you can't really display that there. But as far as the type treatment, it's classic 90s where they'll take it and just stretch it out and make it look as big as they can even though it doesn't that's breaking a lot of rules. You shouldn't be squishing fonts like that. It makes it hard to read, but I like the idea of it being all like in your face edgy and then it's actually just a product manager interview. I think that's kind of funny.
Things have changed so much now, like in video games and how they advertise video games. I think now it would be like art of Streets of Rage with some screenshots and then the release date or something. Like they don't do this kind of promotion anymore where it's like, I don't know, like why shoot a guy hurt, right? Like what's this whole thing going on here? It's just like it's just the way they used to promote ads. It's just kind of weird. But let's talk about the second.
It's
promo.
fitting. Well, it's fitting though that we're talking about this one, and I got a bloody nose. Look at that, I got blood.
Oh,
I was like, my nose is running, and I'm like, no, it's blood. Cool.
You need time to get.
No, I'm fine.
Later, we also got a 2-page spread ad, which is kind of rare for Sega to do 2 pages. So Streets of Rage 2 got two spread ads, one for the Game Gear and one obviously the Genesis one we saw. The Game Gear version, this one is using its own original artwork, also has the Welcome to the Next Level branding, and some use of the old-timey family, which was kind of like a stereotype in Sega where it's like, you're the new family. This is kind of like something that I really saw a lot in the early 90s where it's the new family does not care about American values of the 50s that we used to care about. That's just kind of like the branding that I saw a lot in the early 90s, like the Simpsons.
Right.
They're not the typical family. They're vulgar, they're new, they're edgy. And this is kind of where they're trying to show you that like, oh, Billy's playing that Streets of Rage 2 game.
Right.
So they did this as an ad. I actually really like the artwork in the back. I think while it's not the original artwork of the creators, I think they did a really good job capturing the feel of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of those. God, what's that company that makes the art prints? The Sega art prints. Cook and Becker.
Yeah.
Reminds me of that, but like honestly, I prefer this to theirs. Like, I'd love to have a huge print
of this one. The only thing
I like it.
The only thing that's kind of strange is they like literally changed Blaze's look. She has like this black tank top and like jean shorts.
Yeah, that
and
is
like,
weird.
Why do you have to change only her? All the other guys are they're all kind of the same basically.
Right.
They're like, we got to change the woman. Oh, anyway.
Something I did notice here, the 2, and you'll see it in the graphic I used. That's the 2. You see the 2? Like the number 2 instead of the Roman numeral.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the Game Gear one, and I don't know why that. Maybe it's for the size of the cart. Like, it's just easier to read the number 2 than the Roman numeral 2. It's interesting.
They got lazy because Bare Knuckles has the 2. The
number 2.
Roman. Yeah, no. The Japanese one has the Roman numeral, and the European one also does. The American is the only one that has the number 2, which is weird.
2. Yeah, and then on this title screen it has the number 2.
Yeah, in America. Yeah, we're the only ones that got the 2 number like that.
It's kind of like Outrun, and how people don't know if it should be Outrun or O capital R as one. It's
a
kind of
mess.
inconsistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next ad we're looking at is a Japanese ad. As you can see, this one is promoting 2 versions of the game. And it kind of looks like a character select screen with its own artwork, which is kind of strange because I think the character select screen in Streets of Rage 2 is like really nice looking. So the fact that they decided like, let's make our own artwork for this, and it looks really ugly in my opinion. Really awkward ad. Sammy right here just looks like, I don't even know, like he doesn't even look like what he looks like in the game. I don't know, it's just weird. What do you think about this whole look? They're true to the characters. Kind of.
Axel has the only like decent pose, but he doesn't really look like Axel. He's got dark brown hair. I don't know what Blaze is doing. She's like, go away.
She's trying to do karate moves,
you.
but she's not.
Yeah,
really
yeah.
good.
And then Max is like.
It's also funny that like when you see the American ads, they have no Sonic on it, but like Japan, even though Sonic wasn't huge, he was basically the mascot for their branding. Like,
I always liked that about the Japanese Sega stuff. Like they would stick a little Sonic bug on the corner with the logo. It worked really well. I wish it's kind of like how all the Dreamcast discs had the Sonic eyes on them.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's a cool way to use your mascot without him overtaking it. Because, if you don't see the Sega logo, like if you're blind to it or something, at least you'll see Sonic.
No,
but,
I totally agree. I actually like the Sonic on it. I just think it's weird that like he wasn't popular in Japan, but they branded him so much. It's like, come on, guys, come on, Japan, get into it. Like in the U.S., he took off so crazy, Let's look at the U.S. ad. This is probably one of my favorite old school. I don't know, what do you call these? Like old timey ads, I guess. Like the L. Nielsen ads, I call them. Right?
Oh yeah.
I really he did such a good job on these ads. Like Sega of America was so good on advertisements. So tell me when you're ready, and I'll press play.
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
All right.
Where do we start?
How about his knee?
That's his face. If that's his face, what's this?
Okay, so that was strange. Did you see the same one I was watching?
Which one did you see?
The one with the hospital with the broken bones, right?
Yeah, it's interesting.
This is not the one I was looking for, actually. This is the weird part. There is another one that was better. But what do you think about this one? I mean, this is kind of like the same as the print ad. There's another one, the bully one, I'm trying to look for. But I guess I didn't put that one up. Can you find it real quick on
The
Google?
bully one where they're flicking the ears, right?
Yeah, that's the one I was looking for. And it's surprising. I guess I copied the wrong one on here. But let me find it on here so we could watch it. But yeah. What do you think about that ad? I mean, it was just kind of a continuation of the print one, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. I thought it was all right. Thought it was interesting.
I think I found it.
Right. I like the bully one more.
Did you find
the bully one? Yeah.
All right, tell me when you want to play it. I'll play it.
I'm ready.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Young Bobby Engels
These ones kind of remind me of like Gushers fruit snack commercials or something.
Yeah.
Like just the way they film them. Everyone's like super animated, and it's like big fisheye lenses.
Oh, I love it.
Very cartoonish.
Now things are pretty much
This is a great commercial.
I said chocolate chip.
And that's
Say-
basically my
say it.
elementary school life right there. I just beat the bullies.
That was you, the one beating
yes,
up the bullies,
yes.
I'm sure.
Of course.
Yeah.
What do you think about, I guess kind of like promoting this as I don't know, how do you say it? Like, you're a nerd, buy this game and you'll be a winner. Is that bad? I actually like the ad, but like,
They call it a fighting system.
Right.
The Sega Genesis fighting system.
And it's also like, when you were a kid, did you want to be a martial artist or anything because of all the action movies that were being put around? Like, I'm going to take karate.
I took one karate class.
Ooh.
I took one karate class, but it was, I think, just too late. It was like kind of like for my parents to like get out of work, have dinner, take me to the class, and then get home at like 9:30. It was just too much. I also took one Korean sword fighting class. But then I moved, and so I did not continue with it. But my friend did, and he like went to like state tournaments and stuff, and was really good at it. I wish I kept with that. It was what is it, kendo or kumdo, where you've got like the mask and the double hand grip.
Yeah.
The big like bamboo. I really like that. I wish I would have kept with that. In an alternate universe where I stayed in Minneapolis, I would have probably been a Korean sword fighter. Yeah. Which is funny because there is a guy with my name who is a Korean sword fighter, but he's not me.
But he's not. Is he good?
He's very good. He comes up on Google before I do. So.
Oh, that's pretty good.
There you go.
Let's talk about the Japanese ad. Let me just tell you a little bit. There's a trend in Japan where they use real life actors, and in this ad we got Blaze doing her energy attack, and then some. It's a 15-second ad, which is a lot shorter than the American ads, because Streets of Rage 2 was rare and it got a 30-second ad, which is pretty big for Sega. So tell me when you're ready to watch this ad, and I'll play it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. What do you think about that ad?
It's okay. I mean, it shows gameplay clips. I think the woman playing Blaze kind of looks goofy. Maybe it's just the compression, but her mouth, she kind of looks like chubby cheeks, kind of.
I don't know if you've seen it, but there's also a Phantasy Star 2 one where they like do real armor and stuff. I always get upset. I used to be obsessed with like the Japanese ads because like they had real actors. I always thought that was really, really cool. Now I'm like, it's not cool. I don't know.
I think she, not to like nitpick this woman, but I think she just has this like tiny face, so she can't pull off badass. It's more like
it's
like
hard
this
to tell.
Tiny little.
I couldn't find a better version of the ad, so it's kind of like it's hard to even look.
This is how she looks.
Compressed. It's so compressed. It's kind of hard to tell, right?
I'm gonna fight you.
You look at her and it's not really doing it for me. She's also like not wearing makeup. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Anyway,
that makes it even better. And I was gonna say,
No.
I didn't know how to bring this up, but there's this picture that I found on the internet when doing research where the Bare Knuckles 2, the Bare Knuckle 2 box art actually has Arnold Schwarzenegger from a Japanese ad that they basically copied as Mr. X in the back. You see it?
Oh, yeah. I knew he looked like Arnold. I didn't know where they copied it from.
Yeah, so and I looked up these ads. It's for an energy drink, and this is actually the time period. So I mean, it makes sense, I guess. They probably saw Arnold's face everywhere, and they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna put him on our box." It's funny that it's also red, like the ad.
And Van Damme's there too.
Yep, Van Damme is they literally copied Van Damme as Axel in the box art for Bare Knuckle 2. So if you're watching this in audio, look at the cover, and then now you can't unsee it. There's also, we're going to talk about some of the ports, not too many of them because there's so many. We could be here all day. The first thing we're going to be talking about, because it had a good billion ports. The only ones worthy, I think, talking about are the Master System, Game Gear, and the 3DS version. Maybe I'm wrong. Some people could tell me on the internet if there's a version that's worth talking about. The first one is the Game Gear version. The Game Gear obviously has scaled down graphics. This is the weird part. Usually when they did a Game Gear game, they just ported it to Master System or the other way around. This time,
right.
The Master System and the Game Gear are totally different games. So the Game Gear version, I guess, would be the most like the original. I guess not really. I mean, you really want to have a Sega Genesis to enjoy this game because I don't think these ports are the best. But I will say that Streets of Rage 2 is the best beat 'em up on the Game Gear. Not that there's that much competition. Some of the changes included, the special move was unlimited. They didn't take away health, and this didn't have max. Also, it had a flicker problem when there was more than more than one character on the screen.
Wow.
There was 2 less stages and less than 30 minutes to complete. The Master System was probably a worse port because like every character would bum rush you. Like the AI was broken. It was hard. Both of these games did not have 8-bit versions, did not have multiplayer, single player, and both had max missing. Yeah, but at least the Master System had like some new stages. Like when you go to the warehouse in this one, you end up on a moving train, which I thought was cool. Like that would have been a cool stage, right? Like a moving train, kind of like those. I don't know if Hyperstone Heist has it, but I do know the Super Nintendo Turtles game has a train level. I don't know if they reused it.
I don't think Hyperstone Heist has that. They have surfing, but not a train.
Yeah, so they had a train, and I always thought that was cool in that game. So, like having a Streets of Rage level on a train would have been really, really sick on the 16-bit version. Did you play the 8-bit version of the games ever?
Never. No, I never have, but now I want to check them out.
I played them just because of this on emulation, and it's... I'm so happy that I grew up being a 16-bit kid, not like being stuck with just a Game Gear or a Master System. Like, I not to fault people that had a Master System. I'm sure there's games...
No, you can fault them.
I'm sure there's games that are exclusive for it that are great. So I'm not gonna,
I will.
The ports from Genesis to Master System, not great because you always want to play the best, right? Like 16-bit.
Right. I always get the vibe that people who grew up on Master System, like they have a lower bar for what constitutes a great game. So they'll like play what's a great game on Master System by comparison to the Genesis is just kind of like mediocre. So you'll have people who get really mad at like people like us when we're like, oh, that game's kind of bad. And they go, no, are you kidding? I played it with my cousin for 13 years in Brazil. We loved it. We're still playing it. It's brand new.
Every second.
And you're like, man, I'm sorry. It's a bad game. And they're like, no, I grew up with it. So, but I think in this case, from what you're saying here, it's definitely, the 8-bit ones definitely they pale in comparison to the 16-bit powerhouse original.
I'm wondering if there's people out there that are going like, oh, you like the Super Nintendo version of Alpha 2? I play the Nintendo version of Alpha 2, the best one. Alpha 2 was actually on Super Nintendo, but the Sega Saturn version is better, obviously. But There's people I met that are like, the Alpha 2 is better on Super Nintendo. I'm like, no, dude, I'm sorry to tell you that. No way. I mean, they didn't have enough power for it. But let's talk about the 3D classic one. I think this needs to be this needs to be brought back to Switch. I mean, I love this game, but like, man, I don't want to bring out my 3DS every time I play it. But anyway, this is probably the biggest update the game has had. 2015 when this came out 5 years ago.
Wow.
Obviously, it adds 3D, which looks really good, but it's kind of gimmicky. But it also had casual mode where attacks do more damage, Fist of Death mode where you could kill people in one hit. Rage Relay, which I thought was kind of interesting. You pick all 4 players, and then once they die, you substitute with another character instead of a life. So it makes you go through all the characters. I thought that was cool. You can also tag them in and out.
I like that. It reminds me of Mania mode, kind of, in Sonic Mania.
Yeah, if they were to do this on Switch, I would hope they do more of like Rage Relay. I thought that was sick.
Yeah.
The big negative on the 3DS version is if you want to play co-op, the other player needs a 3DS with a copy of their own game. I do know that some DS games used to have where you could download part of the game onto another system and play it. This obviously does not have it. Right. I will say something interesting though. When Nintendo World Report interviewed producer Yosuke Okunari about the 3DS port and what he would add if he had more time, he said, "While we were developing the game, there weren't any features we particularly felt were missing, actually. But after we finished the game, we actually had a chance to talk to Ancient themselves, the game's original developer, and they told us that they had wanted to put more effort into the 2-player versus mode, and they ran out of time. It turns out Shiva, Mr. X's right-hand man at the end of the game, even has a versus mode specific motions implemented in the game. So if we had more time and budget, I'd like to work with Ancient to build out the versus mode into what they originally intended."
That would be really cool.
I don't think a lot of people played it, but I guess it would be cool. I mean, it wasn't the main reason we played it. I mean, I think if they had cut levels, it would be sick. Maybe even adding the train level in the middle for no reason. Let's talk about other media.
Yes.
Back in the good old days, we got a kind of a very loosely based comic book on Streets of Rage 2. It was within the Sonic the Comic by Fleetway. It was a 6-part saga, right? Is that what it was? I
thought it was 3, but maybe it was 3. 6
no,
broken up over.
Actually, you're right. I think it was 3, but I changed it because I thought it was 6. But you're right. I think it is 3 because I think it's like the second story is about Skate, and I think the first story is just introducing the characters. But trying to see here, the story in the comics about Axel, Blaze, and Max, who here is an ex-cop rather than a wrestler. In the first issue, Axel is brutally injured by former cops, which makes the trio quit the force and go out to beat Hawk, who is a former policeman and once Max's partner. There was more stories within the comic, but sadly didn't last long. Fun fact, the writer of the first 2 issues of the Streets of Rage comic is none other than Mark Miller, who went on to write Civil War for Marvel Comics and even became a movie. He also had his own comic books that have become popular movies like Kick-Ass, The Service, Wanted, Kingsman, and a few others. There's a lot more comics he's made. What is your opinion on the comic, and did you find it strange that Sega didn't license more Streets of Rage things like this?
From what I saw of the comic, I thought it was decent. I thought it was pretty good. I have to go check and see if I own it. I have a stack of Sonic the Comics, but I wish Sega would do more of this. I don't know if I've said it on the show, but I've said in our Discord time and again that I really wish IDW would do like a Sega All-Stars comic series where they'd either do like 3-issue or 4-issue arcs as they kind of do now with Sonic, or do one-offs. So like you get an issue that's like Streets of Rage adaptation. You get an issue that's like Skies of Arcadia, like sequel story or something. Just like you have all these great characters, use them. And I think Streets of Rage especially is in that kind of bucket of Sega properties that they really want to exploit. So, I know they're aiming for like video games, or not video games, for movies and TV, but like comics. honestly, I think are a great way to go right now.
I agree. I mean, right now we have this whole problem with COVID. I don't know how that's going to happen with comics, but I do agree that I'm surprised they didn't like license it more. Like they couldn't make their own comic and even try it. I have a few, like there's a comic for Shinobi, and there's like they all got like
I have
one
that,
issue.
yeah,
they all got like
yeah,
one
and
issue.
then they did Yakuza digital comics too, if I remember.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's something they could look into. I thought it was cool. Axel Stone also appeared as a solo unit in 2015 3DS crossover game Project X Zone 2, which also had an appearance by Break as a rival unit. If you don't know, Break is the evil robotic clone of Axel Stone from Streets of Rage 3.
Yeah.
And the last bit, tragically, Streets of Rage characters also appeared in SEGA Heroes. This one's actually based on the first game, but since this wasn't out when we did the first podcast, we're going to mention it here, right? Sadly, SEGA Heroes has now closed its doors. I guess not officially yet, but very soon.
Like 7 days, yeah.
7 days in a week. So we will never be getting Streets of Rage 2 characters within the game. And that's it. I mean, what do you think about, I guess, have you played the characters in SEGA Heroes? And what do you think about, a lot of people on the internet don't like that Sega's using these characters as they call it cheap cash-in for mobile games. Do you think it's sacrilegious to do this, or do you think that it's just a game? If you don't like it, don't play it.
I think it's just a game. If you don't like it, don't play it. I think I'd love to do a Sega talk on Sega Heroes someday.
Yeah.
But because I think there is a lot to say. But from what I've experienced, it's fine. I think it's cool to see all these characters come together, and I like that they give someone like Mr. X a little more play. I also like the interactions between them. That's a lot of the fun, is just to see like Axel and Sonic having a conversation. It's Project Cross Zone. I like those games, but they are very Japanese centric. So you're going to see like Valkyria Chronicles 3. It's also very human centric. So you're not going to see Sonic. You're not going to see more of the all ages stuff like Jet Set Radio. And yet they'll have like Bruno Dillinger from Dynamite Cop. So it's, I honestly, like, in the future, I'd love to see more of these. I hope they figure out a way to do something like Sega Heroes. I know you and I can't say much, but like, prior to this game, there was stuff going on where we were like sharing our opinions. So they clearly want to do things. So I hope those move forward.
I think some of those
things should we
what's that? No, I'm saying just some of the things we talked about on the phone with Sega on feedback. I think some of those ideas we talked about actually became Sega Heroes, because like, I'm not going to get into it because there's an NDA and they told me not to talk about it, but there was this game they talked about that was kind of like this but a little bit different, and then I gave them a feedback where it's like, no, it has to be the characters in the game that you collect. And I mean, we got Sega Heroes a year later. So I mean, I think feedback for these kind of things is worth it. But yeah, let's read our Patreon comics and close it up.
Yes, I'll read them. So if you support us on Patreon at any level, you will have your comments read on the show. So let's kick it off. We have Brian Trong. He says, this game was a revelation. The first one was good, but the drastic improvements in the visuals and gameplay, as well as the killer soundtrack, made more a mind-blowing experience that raised expectations on what the Genesis could do. TH says, back in the day, every month I eagerly awaited for a UK magazine called Mean Machines, SEGA, to arrive at the stores. This is not what he sounds like. One month I saw something strange with the magazine. It came with a VHS tape. On it was footage of upcoming Mega CD and Mega Drive tapes. Can you imagine, like, this big-ass tape?
Yeah, I know.
This was the first time I saw Streets of Rage 2. I watched that tape 1,000 times. When I finally got my hands on it, it became one of the defining games of my life. I played it with my brother and friend, never getting bored with it. Even to this day, my friend and I recorded the music on tape and would listen to it all the time. Yuzo Koshiro is one of my heroes. An incredible game, all in all. And then finally, longtime commenter Daniel Andres says, I just finished this game for the first time last year. I thought it was awesome. definitely a worthy sequel to the first one. Loved it a lot. And then we have 2 Twitter comments cherry picked from the Twitter feed. BC Alexander says, I picked up the Genesis collection on Switch and fell in love with the game about a month ago. Then Streets of Rage 4 came out. I got into the series at the right moment by pure happenstance. Ooh, what a word. Wampastolpa says, I love how wacky they got with the level design. A level in Disney World with a pirates ride, a wrestling ring under a baseball stadium? Why not? The rule of cool dictated what happened in Streets of Rage 2, and it was a very cool game. Who is this guy?
I like
The rule of cool. I like that. The rule of cool.
And
so,
for the rest of you guys, we'll catch you on the next episode of Sega Talk. Bye.
Bye.